during this time living on dorm floors and selling Coca-Cola bottles.
My roommate does this. He will take like the bottle caps of like Pepsi products and they have like a code and you can enter it online and get like 5 cents back. You know, nobody does it because it's 5 cents. So who knows? Maybe my roommate's the next Steve Jobs. I guess that is true. Or shortage.
We should just be shorter, even though we're pretty short.
Yeah. Anyways.
Okay, Cohen, do your thing.
Steve Jobs, outcast, hippie, druggie, entrepreneur, perfectionist, billionaire, and perhaps one of the greatest visionaries ever. Welcome to Finding Zeal. If it's your first time here, I'm Cohen, this is Josh, and this podcast is all about helping people find and follow their passion. So, yeah, we're going to be diving into Steve Jobs' life in today's episode. So, yeah, if you've ever asked the question, what am I doing with my life? Steve Jobs has asked that exact same question when he was in college. I mean, so you're not alone.
Yeah, everyone knows who Steve Jobs is, right? Come on, guys. Like,
I mean,
Steve
I think
Jobs,
everybody knows.
Yeah.
Does everybody actually know?
Do you know who Steve Jobs is?
We're gonna start from the beginning of his life and just work through it really quickly, kind of quickly, I guess. And
yeah, kind of quickly.
So that way y'all know who he is, know what he's done, his accomplishments. We kind of touched on it just a second ago. But fun fact, Steve Jobs' life was interesting interesting since day one because he was adopted.
Yeah, he was adopted.
Which is strange. Not strange, but
his parents' names, his original parents' names were Abdul Fattah Jandali and Joanne Schiebel.
That is so strange.
But then
guess
we
just know as Steve Jobs.
His now parents' names are Paul and Clara.
That's so normal.
They went from Abdul Fattah, Joanne to Paul and Clara.
Dude, that's crazy. And it's funny because I actually have 2 younger siblings that are adopted, so I'm pretty familiar with it.
So do I.
Yeah, it's crazy that we both have siblings that are adopted, and Steve Jobs is adopted. It's a small world.
We're pretty much Steve Jobs.
Yeah, we know exactly what Steve Jobs' life was like.
But another crazy thing is Steve Jobs' name is Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
But his birth cousin claims that his actual birth name was Abdul Latif Jindali.
I mean, it's probably true. His parents probably renamed him after they adopted him.
Which is crazy, though, because, I mean, imagine Abdul Latif Jindali founded
I feel like
Apple.
he wouldn't be as famous because it's so complicated.
It's a little complicated, but I think he'd be just as famous. But instead of all these movies like called Steve Jobs, it'd be Abdul Latif Jindali.
That's so strange.
He'd probably be at a different spot, too, if he wasn't adopted. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
His biological parents, they wanted him to be adopted by parents who had been to college, so that way he could go to college and be educated because they weren't educated at all. But it turns out his parents that adopted him didn't go to college.
Nope. And they weren't supposed to be Steve Jobs' parents. And the original parents...
Oh, yeah. I remember reading this.
Tried to fight in court to have Steve have different parents.
That's so crazy. So since day one, it's like all this chaos about college so far down the road.
Yeah.
About this little baby.
Uh-huh.
And basically, I mean, him being adopted, him being really smart when he was younger kind of led to him kind of being bullied or outcast a little bit from a young age. And I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you read this, but I read that he taught himself to read.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't read that.
So he was kind of just bored in school and like the early stages, because basically learning to read is like your first like 3 years of school.
Yeah.
And so he was just kind of bored, and the teachers wanted to push him ahead 2 grades.
Yeah, I saw that.
But
he would have jumped from elementary to junior high, from 4th grade to 7th grade.
Yeah, or finishing 4th grade to starting 7th grade.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
Instead,
crazy.
he only skipped 1 grade.
Yeah, because his parents were like, that would create way too much social anxiety.
And he was already a lonely kid, already isolated, bullied, and he was already obviously too smart. And, if someone's too smart, they're going to be bullied. And he was too smart, but he was smart in an engineering way. He was pulled towards older kids who were in STEM, and the school he went to was not STEM-minded. And so he ended up, at some point, transferring to a different school that had more engineers.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. And his parents, who were not rich, were pretty poor, actually, ended up moving and buying a different house that they couldn't really afford so he could go to a different school.
Dang, to move to another school district.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then he was very engineering minded and STEM and all those things. And so when he was in high school at age 12, Steve Jobs reached out to Hewlett Packard, which is a big like laptop technology, electronics company. Like everyone knows it. It's HP, Hewlett Packard.
Oh, yeah.
And was calling them to try to get spare electronics parts.
And how old was he?
He was 12.
12
years old, just in high school, just edge of junior high, and was calling for spare parts. And guess who picked up?
The CEO.
You know the answer. It was Bill Hewlett, like literally the main guy. Like,
dude, what are the
named
odds
after him?
Did he like purposely call Bill Hewlett, or was he just trying to call the company?
He was just trying to call the company. Like, how would you have Bill Hewlett's number?
I don't know.
Yeah, and so he calls the company, and lo and behold, Bill Hewlett picks up. And there's this quote from Steve Jobs, and he says, "He laughed and gave me the spare parts to build the frequency counter, and he gave me a job that summer at Hewlett Packard, working on the assembly line, putting nuts and bolts together on frequency counters. He got me a job in the place that built them, and I was in heaven," which is crazy.
Dude, that's even crazier than you getting your internship.
Yeah.
In high school. He got it when he was like 12.
At the premier place, literally, like freaking Hewlett Packard.
And he ends up doing something super similar.
Yeah, and now he is was in Apple. A competitor for Hewlett Packard, for HP.
That's crazy.
Apple's Mac laptop. And it all started when he got that internship. Probably started earlier, but I'd say it kind of jump-started because internships kind of push you towards your career field.
That's ridiculous. So he got interested in tech kind of around that time. And then I also read that he got interested in tech because his dad was like a technician or mechanic. Mechanic for
machinist.
Machinist.
That's what I read.
For on cars.
Yes.
And so he kind of got into working with some technology there. And that was kind of his high school life. And now he also ended up meeting
Steve Wozniak.
Woz in high school.
In an Electronics 1 class.
Which, first off, what even is that class? And that sounds like a college class.
Yeah, it does.
In high school, which is crazy. And also he met this guy who's like 5 years older than him.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Especially when you're like 13 or 14, connecting with somebody who's like 5 years older than you.
Yeah. And at like Steve Jobs was still in. Well, okay. Funny thing is, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. So now we can't say Steve anymore.
Yeah.
We gotta make sure we're saying Wozniak or Jobs.
Yeah, Woz or Steve or Woz or Jobs.
Not Woz or Steve. So then Jobs is still in high school, but Wozniak is out of high school after they've become friends and gone through this Electronic 1 class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Wozniak develops this. Okay, I definitely skipped over some of the things I wanted to talk about, but Wozniak develops this thing called the Blue Box, and the Blue Box was a device to manipulate the phone network to have free long distance phone calls. I have no clue how it worked. It's just old stuff, I guess.
So basically, actually, I know how it worked.
Oh.
So basically, back in the day, when you would dial a phone long distance, it made a certain sound, and you would have to pay for long distance calls and it would make a certain sound, so that be-doo, be-doo, doo, 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 or whatever, you know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
That old phones make it was like sound based. So the sound is what like sent it or something like that. And so they found a way to imitate the sound. And by imitating the sound, they could not pay for, like you would pay for the sound to be made for the call to be sent. But by imitating the sound, I think, is how they were able to send calls for free.
I see. Well, so Wozniak developed this. And Steve, being Wozniak's friend and also interested in electronics, was like, we should sell it.
Yeah.
And this is just the precursor to Apple, because Wozniak and Jobs were the people that founded Apple. And like I'm pretty sure that Steve's kind of credited this moment and this time to what led to founding Apple.
Yeah, dude.
Cool.
So Wozniak kind of created the idea, but Steve really pushed the business side of it.
Yeah.
Saying that we should sell this, and Wozniak originally just wanted to sell it for what they made it for. I think it was like $40. They could make one for $40. But Jobs was like, no, we should sell it for $150 so we could mark it up and make money. And so what they do is they go to dorm rooms and be like, is George here? And they'd be like, oh, no, wait, who's George? No, there's not George yet. Oh, well, George is just somebody who ordered this thing, and they would tell the people what they did and be like, whoa, that's cool. Can I get one? And so they would pretend like they were showing up to deliver one to a guy named George when there's really nobody named George in the dorm.
Yeah.
And then they could hopefully explain
what a cool marketing strategy.
I know. So dude, Steve, and that was in college.
Yeah.
But college time.
I mean, so like I feel like something that kind of plays into that is obviously we've touched on how Jobs was interested in electronics and engineering and science and technology, but while he was still in high school, he started to develop an interest in literature and Eastern mysticism. And I think that during this time, he started to stray away, at least somewhat, from science and technology, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's something that I definitely didn't know about Steve Jobs. And it even followed him to college. Because he only stayed in college for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then he ends up dropping out of college and kind of just dropping into these random classes that he just was interested in. So he took like dance and calligraphy and a bunch of weird stuff.
During this time, living on dorm floors and selling Coca-Cola bottles.
I heard that as well.
To make money for food.
You can still do that, actually, I think.
For
Pepsi,
like 5 cents or something.
Yeah, Pepsi. My roommate does this. My roommate, Calvin, he will take like the bottle caps of like Pepsi products and they have like a code and you can enter it online and get like 5 cents back. And when you get to $1, you can cash it in or something.
That's so weird.
And, nobody does it because it's 5 cents. Who cares about 5 cents? But Steve Jobs did, and my roommate does.
Yep.
So who knows? Maybe my roommate's the next Steve Jobs. He is a civil engineer.
That's going to be the only joke we make this whole episode. We are Steve Jobs. Our friends are Steve Jobs. My parents are Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs saved bottle caps, so you should too.
That's our advice. But I think this also kind of plays into, like, I was interested in multiple things in high school, multiple careers. I was interested in being an architect or being an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that, I don't know, you could kind of make similarities, but they're not very similar at all.
I mean, yeah, they seem similar from somebody who maybe doesn't know too much about the fields.
Yeah.
But they do quite different things.
Yeah, and so Steve Jobs at this point was interested in literature and English, and then the whole other side of the spectrum, he was interested in technology and science and things like that.
Yeah. And him dropping out of college, during that time, he was not like some genius put together dude. He was like a literal druggie and hippie.
Yeah.
Like he walked around barefoot. He believed that since he didn't eat meat, he did not smell. So he never showered and he never put on deodorant. So it's just like a long-haired, barefoot, stinky hippie walking around California.
And that was Steve Jobs.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like somebody who would own a multi-billion-dollar company and change the world.
Next time you see a hippie anywhere, next time you see a homeless person, that could be Steve Jobs.
You never know. And so I think I have a theory about Steve Jobs. He was either going to be a crazy lunatic failure and hobo, or he was going to be a crazy revolutionary, like visionary and businessman. Because I don't think he was ever going to work for somebody, and we're going to see this in his life. Like, he does not do well, like taking instructions from other people
under someone.
Yeah, and so I think he was so crazy that it was kind of like one or the other. He was either going to be crazy successful because he was so crazy, or he was just going to be a crazy failure. You know what I'm saying?
And we are trying to get takeaways from this man's life. We are trying to show you how to become crazy successful in a career, passionate about something.
Yeah, I even read that when he was in college. He said one of the most important things in his life was LSD.
Yep. One of the 3 most important things in his life.
Yeah, whatever that means. I would say that's not probably the takeaway.
No, probably not. We do not advise you do LSD.
Nope.
Never. But yeah, so after he dropped out of college and spent some time up at Reed College, by the way, we didn't say that. No clue where that is. I think it's in California.
At the time, it was one of the most expensive colleges in the country.
Wow.
It was like similar price to Stanford.
Which is crazy because I don't even know who.
Yeah, I think
Reed College is.
I read that he potentially went there just to spite his parents because he didn't want to go to college.
Yeah.
And his parents were paying for college, so he just went somewhere expensive.
Well, another tidbit is in order to keep Steve Jobs, and the court wouldn't take him away when he was being adopted, was they agreed to pay for his college. And so his birth parents, so
they were legally obligated
to
pay for his college.
I don't know if it was legal. I don't know if it was in the court, but I know that his birth parents, his actual parents, I don't know how to refer, Paul and man, I'm forgetting her name. Paul and Clara said that they would pay for his college, and that was one of the ways that they convinced his birth parents to let them keep him. And so that was that. But so he went to Reed College, and at some point after, I think it was, do you know how long it was? A couple of years. He returns home and starts working for Atari.
Oh, yeah. So that was like probably like 19 or 18 or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because basically, he starts working for Atari, and the story of that is he comes in, he was walking around and he sees a sign, like get paid and have fun or something like that. And so he was like, oh, that sounds great. So he goes in and he goes into Atari and he's like, I'm going to work here. I'm not leaving until you give me a job to work here.
No way.
And they were just like, so he's just standing in like the entryway? Not the entryway, but
foyer. I don't know.
And so, they call over the head engineer guy, that way, some crazy hippie. Do you want us to let him through or just send him away? And he's like, let him through.
Yeah.
And basically convinces him to let him have a job. And the job is like $5 an hour. It's like nothing.
It was a technician.
Yeah, it was nothing that special. But eventually, he gets the project to work on the game Pong, because they knew he was really smart. And they've been working on it for a few months, and they couldn't figure it out. None of the software engineers could figure it out. And so they're like, we'll give Steve a stab at it. And so Steve gets with Woz, and
Steve Wozniak.
Yeah, so Jobs gets with Woz, and was like, hey, help me do this. And basically he says we have 4 days to do it, even though he's completely lying. They had whenever. And they do it in 4 days. Woz helps them do it in 4 days and basically create this game that's pretty famous, at least for its time.
Yeah.
It was kind of revolutionary gaming software.
Atari, if you don't know, was like one of the first gaming systems, game creators that very, very popular back then. My dad raves about all their games.
Oh, yeah, dude. Our dads, they ate that stuff up, man.
Yeah. It's our COD.
Yeah.
Call of Duty.
So basically, he's worked so far at kind of some of these crazy companies.
Hewlett Packard, Atari.
Yeah, companies that like grow to be huge.
Yeah.
But in the midst of all that, he's like a druggie and a hippie and kind of trying to find himself a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the reason he started working at Atari was so he could save money to go to India.
Yeah, and he ends up basically telling his boss, like, hey, I want you to help pay for me to go to India when he's bringing Atari. His boss is like, okay, no. But we do have some like supplier issues over in like Europe or something like that, somewhere over there. It's like, so we can get you on a plane over there, and then from there, it'll be cheaper for you to get to India. And so his boss kind of helped him.
Yeah.
And then he basically went to India for 7 months to kind of pursue
spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah. He went on a journey to find himself.
Yeah, and he was looking for Neem Karoli Baba, who had actually died earlier that year.
Oh.
Yeah, which is
dang, that would suck. Imagine spending all that money, especially back in the day, to travel all the way over there.
Yeah, and
it's like, oh,
he went with Daniel Kote, who was a friend from Reed, but also one of the first Apple employees later on, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, so he's building connections.
Yeah, hey, getting connections right there.
But it's so crazy because when he came back, they just gave him his job back at Atari.
Yeah.
It's just like the culture back then was so different because I don't think that would fly at all.
Oh, no, definitely not.
If I just went up to my boss manager and was like, hey, can you all help pay for me to go to India? Yeah. And then I'll be gone for half a year and then I'll just come back and whenever I feel like it.
And
like, I mean, no, you're fired.
And I mean, during this time, he became a practitioner for Zen Buddhism.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
A practitioner?
I just saw that. So during this time, he's just been going through spiritual enlightenment for Buddhism, I believe. Pursuing that more and learning more about that, which is pretty interesting. And kind of just neglecting everything else, his job, his interest in science and technology. So, that's pretty interesting. And then when he gets back, he starts working at Atari again, like you were saying, and starts working on the video game Breakout. And he was tasked with creating a circuit board for it. And while he was doing that, he reached out to Steve Wozniak and was like, hey, I'm not really sure how to do this. If you help me do this, I'll give you half the money. And Wozniak helps him do it, does it in like the smallest amount of circuit boards that like anyone's done at Atari, which is what he was tasked with doing. And it's like great and it works perfectly. And Jobs tells him that the payout was only $700 and Wozniak gets $350, but later finds out that the payout was $10,000.
Dude, yeah. Steve Jobs was literally a professor at convincing people to do things.
Yeah. Like he was charismatic and could talk his way out of things, talk his way into things.
And Wozniak just wasn't that much of a business person, but he was a genius engineer. Yeah. And so Wozniak really can be attributed to a lot of the early success of Apple because he actually came up with a lot of the ideas. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they sold everything to start a new company, Apple.
They literally sold like everything, right?
Yeah, Steve Jobs basically just had a calculator that was worth $500, I think, and he sold it. And
no, that was Steve Wozniak, was it not? Maybe
Wozniak sold his car.
Oh, I thought it was Flip.
Somebody fact check us. Yeah, Josh, you look it up.
I'll check my.
But I'm pretty sure it's Steve Jobs sold his calculator, and
Yeah,
Wozniak sold his car. Anyways, beside the point. They pump out their first computer, does relatively well. They sell it to basically just like geeks around the area, like not like regular everyday people. And they're just working on Jobs' garage, his parents' garage, and they're just making these computers. But he somehow convinces somebody to invest $250,000 into their company for 1/3 of the equity. Which is insane.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't even done that much sales and they got somebody to invest $250,000.
Yeah.
Which just kind of shows Steve Jobs was just an expert at convincing people.
Also, like back then, that's a lot more money.
Yeah, it's back in the late 70s.
Yeah, I mean, probably not too much of a difference, but that's still a lot of money.
20 years old.
Oops.
Josh's phone again. Wait, it was last episode.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was episode 1 or episode 2.
Yeah. I have an alarm set so I can go to bed on time, but it never
It's past your
works.
bedtime.
Yeah, it's past my bedtime.
But they got $250,000, and they kind of became a fictional company. Then they moved out of the garage into an office, hired employees, and eventually got around to launching Apple II, which was basically a huge success. And a story I have from that is Steve Jobs was obsessed with perfection and this like image. He wanted Apple to just have this image, which it really does, and so he did well.
I mean, it's still like that
but it was at a computer, like at this computer conference or whatever, where everybody was like showcasing their computers, and he bought like basically one of the top spots, like one of the top locations, like tables with like the biggest companies.
Yeah.
Because he wanted people to think that it was one of the top computers. Even though they're just a startup out of a garage. They hadn't even sold any of these Apple. They just sold computers up to this point out of a garage.
Yeah.
But for the Apple II,
image is everything.
He wanted a table with the best guys. And so it was a huge hit. They made tons of money. Basically in 4 years, they went from being between 20 and 24 years old.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, the company Apple was valued at $5,307 when they first started it.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming is just the money they got from the calculator and the car plus a little bit of savings.
Also, Wozniak sold his HP Scientific calculator, and Jobs sold his Volkswagen.
Oh, what? So I was wrong.
Yeah, I get absolutely
So
destroyed.
Steve sold the calculator, and the other Steve sold the car. So technically, I was close.
Yeah, you got it right.
Anyways, that's why we have you to fact check. But yeah, they went from $5,307 evaluation when they first started a company. 4 years later, after they had sold a lot of the Apple IIs, they went public. Their company went public.
Mm-hmm.
And after they went public, they were evaluated at $1.8 billion.
Wow.
In 4 years. And so what they were saying is Steve Jobs became an overnight millionaire after they went public.
Wow.
And 300 employees became overnight millionaires from them going public.
Wow.
So imagine, because you're just an employee, so you have some shares.
Yeah.
You got shares for free, kind of, whenever you're working, and then they go public.
And they got valued so high.
Yeah, and the stock just got pushed immediately. And so 300 employees became millionaires.
Wow.
And he's 25.
Literally.
Insane. And so,
no, here it says he was 23.
23 when they went?
When he was worth over 1 million, he was 23. And then by 25, he was 250 million net worth.
Yeah, I bet when he was 25 was after the $1.8 billion.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Whatever.
Technicality. I bet he was worth more than $1 million before they went public.
Oh, for sure. He's
because
crazy.
Of how many Apple IIs they sold.
Literally, he's like a year or 2 years older than me and already worth $1 million.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years older than me.
I'm worth
what are we? He started Apple when he was 20.
3 cents.
I'm 20. I'm about to be 21.
Gosh. What have we started?
We started a company called Orange.
We started a podcast.
Yeah.
Valued at...
Hey, in 4 years, we're going to get evaluated at $1 billion.
Valued at what? However much these mice cost you.
Valued at $200.
That's what Finding Zeal's valued at right now.
Yep. That's funny, actually. Dude, he could have just stopped right there, retired a millionaire.
Literally. Big chillin'.
Literally just bought an island.
Yeah.
Chilled for the rest of his life.
For real.
But basically, he's insane. He's obsessed with computers and obsessed with like changing the future and creating it for the average consumer. That's what he's obsessed with, making computers.
Keyword being obsessed.
Yeah, he was actually crazy. Like, he was like a hippie druggie before. Now he's not so much a hippie and a druggie, but more of just an obsessed, crazy businessman. Mm-hmm. And so things kind of start going downhill. He says he's only going to hire A-grade players, which is super important. I think is a lot attributed to his success.
Yeah.
But he kind of becomes obsessed with perfectionism, and his employees basically say he has this thing called reality distortion field.
What the heck is that? That sounds so weird.
It's basically how they explained it, and what I was reading, what I was listening to. He would make impossible things seem possible, and he would ignore the facts that he did not like.
That's so stupid.
So basically, it helped him in ways where like he was able to convince people to do things and get the best out of them. But he was
like
also
super tight deadlines or something like that.
Yeah. So basically, here's an example. This guy came to him, and it took a really long time for the Mac to start up.
Yeah.
For the computer to start up, and he was like,
yeah.
"This is too long. We can't sell this to people." He's like, "I need you to cut it down." And the guy goes, "Well, I can't. I've done my best. This is as fast as I can get it." And Steve Jobs was like, "What if somebody's life depended on it?
Mm-hmm.
If it could save one life, could you cut it down 10 seconds?" And he goes, I mean, maybe. And so Steve Jobs whoops out a bunch of calculations and is like, if 5 million people use this once a day, so that's 365 days, which is however much time the startup was, and basically calculated how long an average life was and calculated out to be you would save about 10 lifetimes if you cut it down 10 seconds in a year. You would save 10 lifetimes in a year.
That's so funny.
If you cut it down 10 seconds. And so he's like, okay, I'll see what I can do. Comes back 2 weeks later, and he's able to cut it down like 24, I think it was like 20 something seconds. He cut it down.
Dang.
And so he was able to get the best out of people by like motivating them in certain ways. But then also another extreme example, like when he got cancer, he just ignored it for a while because he was like, it's not in my reality. Like,
interesting.
Me having cancer is not.
I mean, it shows kind of like how charismatic he is and how he can manipulate words and how good of a salesperson or speaker he is, while also having this technology background as well, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, just crazy. He was obsessed, like we said, absolutely obsessed. So basically this obsession makes him like lash out at employees, and he kind of becomes an extremist where everything's either the best idea possible or it's the worst. You're an idiot. Like, why would you ever even talk to me kind of thing. So
how long into Apple was this, or was this just going on the whole time?
This was in, I think, like the mid 80s.
Okay.
So like after 84.
And Apple started in 1976?
Yes. So
Okay.
they had the 84 commercial, which I didn't mention yet, but basically it's a super famous commercial. You can Google it. And it was one of the most famous Super Bowl commercials of like that decade.
Okay, I don't even think I've seen
Apple didn't want to, the executives didn't like the commercial because it didn't mention the Macintosh. So at the time he was working on the Macintosh.
Yeah.
Which kind of ended up being a fail.
Yeah.
But the advertisement was basically, you have to watch it for yourself because it's kind of complicated, but it doesn't really mention the actual product. It doesn't show the product. It just
it's like Apple commercials now.
Yeah. It's basically like a lot of commercials now, but it ended up becoming, so he basically lied to them by saying that they couldn't sell off their commercial spot. And so he didn't even try to sell it off. He just wanted to air the commercial. And it became one of the most famous commercials. So it led to a lot of success. But then when the Macintosh just didn't sell to as many people as they wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of becoming crazy and lashing out on employees. People didn't like working for him.
In 84, 85.
And kind of around that time. And they also had hired a new CEO to help run the company.
Yeah.
And so basically they had a split in difference, and the board voted Steve Jobs out.
Wow.
So Steve Jobs got fired
9 years into the company.
from his own company.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know the exact date that he got fired or the exact year, but I think it was like maybe 86, I want to say.
I think it's 85.
85. Yeah. So getting fired from his own company, and now he's got a lot of money. He's forced to sell all of his shares.
Okay, September 17th, 1985. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
He
forced actually submitted a letter of resignation, but obviously he was just forced out.
Yeah. And he sold all of his shares, had a lot of money, and he got just retired once again.
Mm-hmm.
But he realized he was pushed out, but he still loved what he did.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to keep doing it. So he started a new computer company.
I mean, hey, if you love what you do, keep doing it.
Yeah, is what made him happy, and is what he wanted to pursue, is his life's work.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's what we have to say to y'all too, you know? I think that's a good point to take away. If you're loving something and you're enjoying doing something, like, keep doing it. Like, make a life out of it.
Yeah, Steve Jobs' goal wasn't to retire on like a fancy beach because he could have done that when he was like 23.
Yeah, literally.
He could just quit right there, saved him a lot of headache. He maybe wouldn't have even died as early if he didn't have all this stress of just constantly pushing.
Mm-hmm.
But he just kept going. And so he started a company called Next, which was basically a computer company where he wanted to design a computer for colleges to do like research and stuff, which is kind of weird. But basically, he was a perfectionist. And so that kind of led to his downfall. So he kind of goes through a phase of he gets kicked out of Apple. He starts Next, and it kind of starts not doing so good.
Yeah.
Because he's having all these crazy expectations with his, delusions and obsession. He even wanted the inside of his computers to be made perfectly, even though nobody would ever see them. He wanted to like paint the factories and the robots in the factories to be all like special looking, even though nobody would ever see any of that.
Yeah.
And so and he bought like chairs for their place that were like $20,000 a piece.
Oh my goodness.
And he like built a custom staircase. Like he was obsessed with like things looking special.
Yeah.
And so that kind of all those extra costs and stuff just didn't help the company. And so Next wasn't doing good. And he bought Pixar around the same time.
Which everyone knows Pixar now. Very popular.
Yeah, very popular animation studio.
But it was not popular back then.
And it was basically not even an animation studio. Like that was one sector of their business.
Yeah.
But he bought it from Lucasfilm, who did like Star Wars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he ultimately wanted to do it as like a computer company. He wanted it to be like a computer company where they can make computers specifically for 3D animations and stuff.
That's
cool. 3D renders.
Yeah.
But turns out not that many people want to buy a computer just for 3D renders. So that whole sector of the company ends up just dying.
Wow.
So like that whole sector of Pixar just doesn't exist anymore because Steve Jobs killed it.
Yeah.
It became bankrupt basically. And so he's not doing too hot. He starts dumping tons of cash into Pixar. I think people estimate close to like $50 million
wow, that's
into
crazy.
Pixar just to keep it afloat. And so he's about to go bankrupt. Like he's gone from instant success to getting fired from his own company that he started.
Yeah.
To starting these other companies and helping these other companies. And now those are about to die. So things aren't looking good for Steve Jobs. And essentially Toy Story happens.
Great movie.
Turns the whole, when somebody comes to him with a vision and it's like, hey, like came up with a vision, like what if these objects were like happy or sad based on them fulfilling the role. So like a cup is happy when it's full of water because it's fulfilling its job.
Yeah.
To hold water. But when it's empty, it's sad.
Yeah.
And so then they applied that to toys. When toys are fulfilling the purpose of kids playing with them, they're happy.
Yeah.
And when toys aren't fulfilling their purpose and they're not being played with or they're at the bottom of the bucket, they're sad. And, everybody's seen Toy Story, and that's kind of how it is.
Sounds pretty stupid in concept, but it's a good movie.
But, he became, I think I read, an overnight billionaire from that movie, doing so much revenue.
Wow.
So,
I'm reading here, he was credited as an executive producer on that movie.
Yeah,
which is so weird.
Steve
Jobs as a producer on a movie.
It's crazy because Pixar ended up getting bought out by Disney.
Yeah,
and he became the largest shareholder of Disney at one point.
I didn't know
that.
At
7%.
I didn't know that. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And so, anyways, that happens, and right around that time, Apple is doing terribly. They're not doing well without Steve Jobs. And so they buy Next and acquire Next. And so Steve Jobs.
In 1997, which is like 12 years after he left.
Yeah. And
that's a long time.
They had, speaking of 12, they had 12 different versions of the Macintosh.
What?
With like slight differences.
Dude, I feel like they only have like one right now.
Well, yeah, because when he came back, he said, no, we cut all this out. We're only making 4 versions. A pro version and like a everyday version. And then we're making like a light version of each of those, if that makes sense. So we're going to make like a portable kind of like lightweight one. We're going to make a more standstill one.
Yeah.
So basically like laptops for pro and
yeah.
light.
Which is kind of the same concept now.
Yeah. So he's like, we just need 4. We need one's for like research and then one for every day. Mm-hmm. And then, laptop versions of each of those essentially.
Yeah.
And he did that. That was like one of the first things he did, which was a good success. Focus. One of the main things that I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but one of the things he would always say is that the person who empathizes best with the customer focuses, and then also I think it's called imputes with the customer, which is basically just like, from my understanding, just the perception of what Apple is to everybody. Mm-hmm. So he was obviously he valued perception a lot, packaged things really nicely.
Yeah, for sure.
Apple's still really packaged and sleek.
One of their main things is their...
Yeah, so he helped them focus. They had all these Macs. He's like, we need to focus, cut these down.
Yeah.
And then he just starts going on an absolute tear.
Yeah, literally.
In the early 2000s of just like, he saved the music industry, basically, by creating the iPod and iTunes.
I didn't know that. Was it struggling?
Yeah, the music industry was doing terribly.
Oh, dude, I listen to music all the time.
Well, because what was happening, the internet had just come out.
Yeah.
And people were pirating music because the only way they knew how to download music. So basically, it was either you could buy music and burn it onto it, or you could buy music at a store, like on a physical record, and buy the whole album.
Yeah.
And that was the only way you could legally do it. Or you could just download it off your computer and burn it onto a disc for like 99 cents.
Oh.
And so people were just doing that because they didn't really have any other option. He believed people weren't doing it because they wanted to do something illegal. They just didn't have any other good option to buy music legally.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't buy one song at a time before.
Mm-hmm.
So he came up, he's like, well, what if I make an iPod and create this iTunes and create a platform for people to legally buy one song at a time and save the music industry, because artists were just not getting any money, essentially, because everything was getting pirated. And so, basically save music with the iPod and iTunes.
Pretty
and then
cool.
Obviously revolutionized the world with the iPhone. And what he in like a famous speech was like, once in like every generation, something happens that changes the world. He's like, in the speech, I'm going to show you 3 things that are going to change our world. And he explained it as like the multi-touch, like touch screen.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big deal.
iMessage.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like this. He's like, I'm going to change the way we communicate with each other. And then I want to say the last one was the App Store.
That makes sense.
They're creating these like applications. And basically he's like, oh yeah, and all of these are in one product, the iPhone. And then boom, he unveiled the iPhone, and
that's pretty cool.
The world went crazy, and he sold tons.
Still going crazy to this day.
Yeah, dude. And so now he's just famous for that.
Literally.
The iPhone. It's crazy that he didn't even come up with the iPhone until towards the end of his career.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's kind of...
Yeah, for us, it seems like, oh, we just grew up the iPhone.
Yeah, and we were like, wow, Steve Jobs was so successful.
Dude, I remember when my dad got an iPhone for the first time.
Yeah, I played Angry Birds for like years.
Yeah. My dad had a BlackBerry, and we were like, dude, look at this iPhone. And then he got the iPhone 4S was the first one with Siri. And we're like, we can talk to it?
Yeah.
And we're like, Siri, what does a squirrel eat? It's like, acorns. And we're like, what?
I just remember I was not old enough to have a phone yet when those were coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And I got an iPhone 3GS, the one in between. And it was before I could like text or call or anything. It was just like, it was pretty much an iPod.
Yeah.
Like I could play games on it. I could,
grind
listen
Angry
to music.
Birds.
Yeah, grind Angry Birds. And I got it, and I had it for like 8 months. And my sister she was 1 year younger than me, right? And she was having her birthday, and I knew she was getting an iPhone. Kind of the same vibe as mine, though. Like just a iPhone you could play with.
Yeah.
No cellular or anything. And I'm up in my room, or up on the toilet the day she's getting an iPhone. And I'm just sitting there, and I drop my phone right into the toilet, and it breaks. And I was devastated. And I credit it to her for the longest time, because the second she got a phone, my phone broke. And I didn't have an iPhone, or I didn't have a phone for like a year or two until my dad like got rid of his phone. And I was so sad because I was like, Grace, you literally did this to me. Like,
It's all your fault.
It literally, yeah. I dropped my phone in the toilet because of you. But yeah, it's so crazy to see how far he came in his life. Like he has accomplished so much. He did accomplish so much, and now he's known as like one of the greatest CEOs, inventors, founder of all time, you know?
Yeah, dude, he's absolutely crazy. And he has a very famous speech that he gives at a Stanford graduation. And I was listening through it, and dude, there's so many good quotes from there. But I think if we want to kind of sum up kind of Jobs' advice to our generation,
Yeah.
because he was giving it to college graduates. And I'm assuming a lot of people listening to this podcast are college age people, you know, young adults. And so essentially this is advice that he would give to us. And here's just his first part that he wanted to talk about is he started off the speech and was like, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I had no idea how college is going to help me figure it out. And so right after that, he's like, I dropped out of college. And he's giving it at a Stanford graduation speech. He's like, yeah, I dropped out of college. And
Did he ever get a degree? Do we know?
Nope.
Wow.
I don't think he did.
A CEO of Apple, no degree.
Well, he didn't take instruction from people that well. And so college was just not his thing.
Wow.
So Steve Jobs doesn't think you should go to college.
I mean, he still benefited from going to college.
Yeah, and doing the random classes.
He still benefited from college.
Yeah.
He
still
I think his point is I didn't go to college and that benefited me.
Yeah. it was good for him. It might not be the best for everybody.
It's probably not the best for everybody.
Yeah, but he says it was the best decision he ever made in his life in the speech. And yeah, and then he goes on to talk about him publicly failing and getting kicked out of Apple.
Yeah.
And I was also convinced that was one of the best things that ever happened to him. And it also made him realize that he loved what he did.
Yeah.
He said in a speech, I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going is that I loved what I did.
Yeah.
Which is what we're talking about on this podcast, like why it's so important to find something you love. So that way because like when you're pursuing something you love and things start going badly, because there's going to be times in life things start going badly.
It's just a thing of life.
Yeah. And you'll be able to get through it because you're still doing something that you believe in and that you're motivated by.
Yeah.
You know, through the hard times. And so he says this other quote, which is super famous, and it's, your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work, and the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And he later says, don't settle. He says it's similar to finding like a relationship. He's like, if you find something you love, it gets better with time. But also you shouldn't settle just like you shouldn't settle for the wrong relationship.
Yeah.
Don't settle for the wrong life, hobby, career, or whatever.
I mean, that makes sense. That can apply to anything almost.
Yeah.
Don't settle. I mean, if you're not happy in what you're doing, like there's something you're going to be happy in doing.
Okay. Some of the last advice he gives in a speech to college students is about death, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
As a college student, I don't think we think about death being around the corner really at all.
No.
Because we're young and hopefully healthy. But I think it's interesting. He talks about it and he says, I'll just quote him, remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. It's almost everything, all external exceptions, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure. These things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. And then he later says, your time is limited, so don't waste your life living someone else's life.
Dang.
Dude, I'm ready to run through a brick wall right now.
That's so deep.
Dude, yeah. I thought it was kind of crazy that he was even like thinks of death like that for a guy.
Interesting. Yeah. As a motivation.
Yeah. He thinks of it like, this is what motivates me to be great, because when I think of it about dying, then I think, oh, my problems, my fears, my failures, they aren't really that important.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just, in a way, belittles his whole life to not be that important. And it takes a lot of pressure off.
Definitely.
To perform at a high level.
Yeah.
And so he then in turn performs at a high level.
Yeah,
Because
I guess.
Anyways, yeah, probably a lot to do with that Eastern mysticism and
Oh, yeah. The weird stuff he was interested in.
yeah.
But I guess kind of going off of that, we wanted to give some kind of application based off of Steve Jobs' life. We have some points that we thought people should embody their lives after Steve Jobs, like some application points that he did that we thought everyone should be doing, and then some things that we didn't think he should have done to find his passion, follow it, and truly do it. And so I guess we'll just hop right into what we think you guys should do.
We just want to summarize some, hey, what can we take away from Steve Jobs?
Yeah.
And apply to our own lives as college students.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Josh, what's the first thing?
So what we thought Steve Jobs did really well was tying in his other passions to his like, main passion or to like his main job or just his life as well. Because, I mean, as we kind of talked about, he was really interested in calligraphy, Eastern mysticism, spirituality, and dancing.
Yeah, random stuff.
Very random stuff. And then on top of that, I mean, like engineering and technology or science and technology.
Those are completely different things.
Yeah, very, very, very different. And somehow he's able to use those things and tie them into his main career, which was being like a CEO or someone who creates new technology and releases it.
Yeah.
I guess a main example is I'll just quote him. He says, "If I never dropped in on that single calligraphy course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportional space fonts."
Dude, that's crazy that he created the way like calligraphy is on computers.
Yeah.
Because he also says in that speech that, Windows just copied Mac. And so there might be a possibility that if I never took that class, that no personal computers would have had calligraphy for another 10 years or something,
Yeah. So weird. I mean, we don't use it very often, but it's just a little personal flair. And I mean, he was super interested in it. He was passionate about it, and he brought it into Mac. And then, I mean, this is another thing we kind of talked about in our last podcast is try new things.
Yeah.
And like by doing that, he was able to find calligraphy. Like he had always been interested in engineering and technology until high school and college. And then he started experimenting. Some of it was a little weird, and we won't encourage you to do LSD because
absolutely not.
Not a good thing. But he was trying new things. He went to India and learned a lot, and all these things. He was never satisfied. He didn't settle, like he said, and he learned a lot about himself, and he tried all these new things and found new passions.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just trying new things can be really helpful in trying to narrow down what you want to do, and who knows when it'll come back to be helpful, even if it seems completely unrelated. He also said, looking back, it's easy to connect the dots, but looking forward, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of similar to that. And our second point is takeaways from Steve Jobs' life is surround yourself with people with similar goals / motivations.
Yeah.
Because his life, we didn't talk about too much in his life, but he was surrounded by a lot of people that turned out to be very successful.
Oh, yeah.
Just to name a few, Bill Hewlett, which is the guy we mentioned, hired him as an intern. His company, or his net worth, $9 billion.
Crazy.
Yeah. And that's not the only billionaire he knows. Robert Friedland, is that how you say his name?
I think so.
Friedland?
I don't know.
Anyways, he was worth just over $1 billion. And basically, he was his college friend. So they were friends in college.
Dang.
And he basically ended up becoming a CEO or owner of this mining company overseas that ended up being worth a lot.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. What are the chances that it'd be like me and you both becoming billionaires with separate companies?
Literally.
That'd be insane. And the other guy, Nolan Bushnell.
Yeah.
And he also knew Bill Gates from an early time.
Yeah.
So those were like several millionaires, billionaires right there.
I mean, Steve Wozniak as well.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
and obviously
obviously.
all the people that you did Apple with became millionaires.
Yeah, I mean, I think Steve Wozniak went in a different way, but still pretty crazy.
Yeah, he sold his shares pretty early, I think,
Yeah.
actually.
But, wow.
So, and I was listening to something, and they were making the point that if Steve Jobs doesn't have all these people around him, then maybe he doesn't become the Steve Jobs that we know today. Because it's really hard when you're pursuing something and nobody around you really has the same motivations or thoughts. Like if you're trying to do well in school and get A's and everybody else is just slacking off, partying, you don't know anybody else trying to get A's, it's kind of hard to be motivated.
Yeah, you'd have to have some insane mental fortitude.
Yeah, but if you have just one or two people that are there in the grind with you, even if they're taking completely different classes, but they're staying up late studying and, you know, they're working hard, and they can be there for you whenever you're having hard times and be like, hey, man, you know, it's going to be worth grinding through this.
Yeah.
You know, so having that community around you is super important, of like-minded people that are willing to motivate you. And also, I think in some ways, Steve Jobs probably helped these people. They probably saw him being super motivated. And
Definitely.
they're like, wow, I can do that. He did 20 years old. He started this company. I can do something. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can kind of move into what we don't think you should
Yeah, Steve Jobs has a lot that you should be like, but I think he also has some vices that,
Yeah.
you know, we mentioned he was obsessed, crazy, literally a hippie and a druggie at one point.
Yeah.
And we're not saying become a druggie.
No, don't become a druggie.
Yeah,
We're saying don't.
Yeah.
That's one of the no.
We're
just kidding.
strongly saying no.
But we kind of wanted to touch on that. You need to know what you value and what your limitations are.
Yeah.
Because Steve Jobs had that. What was that weird kind of words you said?
Oh gosh, it's a tongue twister. I wrote it down. Don't worry. Reality distortion field.
Reality distortion field, which in total kind of just meant that he was obsessive and wanted perfection and like wanted it so bad that he would ignore facts.
Yeah.
Like literal things that are completely true. He would ignore them and try to get things accomplished anyways. And I mean, that worked out well for him sometimes, but sometimes that led to him literally like crashing a company into the ground. And
yeah, I mean, he almost, in the middle of his life, things were going bad. Like, it almost led to him just becoming bankrupt. And so
I think that just begs the point, like, passion is good, but obsession is not.
Yeah.
Like, it's good to be passionate about something and grind for it and stick with it whenever things aren't going great, but obsessing over something and wanting absolute perfection that you'll ignore when your body's failing you or when you're struggling or whatever, like, is not good.
And to the point where he would just ignore other people's feelings, thoughts, beliefs. Like, he did not care.
Yeah.
Like, he would scream and yell at people, just treat his employees terribly. And to be successful like Steve Jobs, I don't think you have to treat people terribly.
Definitely not. He was talented, and there were so many other ways.
Yeah, I think he succeeded because his strengths were really good.
Yeah.
But I think he could have succeeded even more if he would have just treated people better, created a better work environment. I mean, some people argue his strictness was the reason for his success, but I think he did it despite his like flaws. He succeeded despite his, passionate flaws.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, and our last point is dropping out of college might not be the answer.
We're obviously in college, so we're a little inclined to say that. But, I mean, follow what you're passionate about, and college is a great avenue to do that. We think it is. I mean, especially for engineers or anything like that.
Yeah.
I would say it's almost required to go into anything engineering. And then other than that, like medical, like you gotta go to college. Like
Law.
they're just, like so many different degrees and so many different very interesting fields and very enjoyable fields stem from college. I would also agree with Steve Jobs that there are some pointless degrees from college.
Yeah.
But I would say the good from college outweighs the bad. And if you get nothing else from college, then experience of how to deal with life and people and things like that, it's still great.
Yeah, and connections, like just getting to meet people and be around people your own age, who are hopefully working hard if you're going to a good
And
university.
I mean, your work ethic will also come from college as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously dropping out of college worked well for Steve Jobs. So
Yeah,
it's
so-
still a very good thing.
A lot of people who are some of the most successful people ever did not go to college.
Yeah.
So it's definitely possible, but you have to be a lot more of a self-starter and
Someone who's willing to work.
make something for yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
You're not going to go and work for somebody as easily if you don't
Mhm.
have a degree.
Okay. Well, do you have anything else to add on Steve Jobs?
No, we just thought he would be a great candidate for this podcast because he pursued something very passionately.
Yeah.
He was obsessed with it, almost too passionate, some might say.
Yeah, obsessed. But he's a pretty great guy.
Yeah.
Apparently.
I think there's a lot we can learn from the things that he did good, the things that he did bad, and hopefully we can apply some of this and moving forward.
Yeah, but I guess kind of to wrap up the podcast, we have a segment that we have not named yet.
Ooh. Josh has been itching to do this.
Yes, I have. Copyright pending. And so what the segment is going to be is every week we're going to have a new kind of like job, or I don't know. We're probably going to just mainly focus on jobs, something you can get paid doing.
We're going to have some crazy job.
Yeah, odd job, something that's a real thing that you would never think is a real thing.
That you could do as a career.
Yeah. It might be a little weird career for some of these, but hey, you could. You can make a living off of it.
Hey, but one of our pillars of our podcast, we want to expose people to different opportunities.
Yeah.
Like careers and stuff like that. So, hey, we're exposing.
So, I looked up a random list, and one of the ones that interested me the most was there's a career called a dice inspector.
Dice inspector.
Yeah, like the thing with 6 dots, 5 dots, 4 dots, 3 dots.
Like you use it like in Catan to roll.
Yeah,
like
or
numbers?
like Yahtzee, you know? And so literally people are paid to inspect dice because dice are supposed to be specifically calibrated, I guess, so that they roll and every number has the same chance to be rolled.
I guess that's true. It has to be almost perfect, I guess, for
Yeah.
it to be equal odds.
And I was reading, and it's kind of interesting. There's no way to be like trained in this. You have to be like the apprentice of a dice inspector.
So it's like a craft.
Yeah, I bet it's passed down from like dad to son, dad
What?
to daughter, blah blah
Dude,
blah.
I wonder how much they get paid.
Yeah. I was looking, and it doesn't show how much they get paid. And I think it's more of a casino thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like because that would matter a lot at casinos.
Oh, it would matter a ton, because imagine someone
It was slightly off.
would like try to sue a casino because a dice was messed
That'd be
up.
like a multi-million-dollar lawsuit.
Oh, it would be a big deal.
Yeah,
But I mean, hey, if you want to go into the dice inspecting industry, find someone that does it already and become their apprentice.
or different thought, you could become a dice inspector, purposely rig some dice, and make a lot of money gambling.
Hey, you're right. Actually, we're not
And then
encouraging
probably
that.
get busted and go to jail for life.
Yeah, you would get in a lot of trouble doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure another dice inspector would be like, hey,
Hey, you're ruining it for
I see what
us.
you're doing there.
I can tell that one edge is 0.6
Yeah.
millimeters off tolerance.
I put a lot of dice in my day. These don't feel right.
They aren't weighted right.
Anyways,
yeah.
if you enjoyed this episode, let us know on Instagram or comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you enjoyed listening to us talk about a successful person, let us know who you want us to do next. If you didn't like it, let us know that too. We'll stop doing them.
Yeah. I'm Steve Jobs, and this is Steve Wozniak, and thank you so much for watching our podcast. Just kidding.
No, wait. I have a new thought of how we should close the podcast.
Oh, okay.
We should I'd be like, this is going to be cheesy, but I was going to be like, this has been Cohen, and you're like, this has been Josh, and we'll see you next time. Finding Zeal or something like that.
Okay. You
like,
go then.
This has been Cohen.
This has been Josh.
And we'll see you next time
on Finding Zeal.